Selling into the higher end of the market is going to put you in front of a different kind of buyer. For lack of a better way to put it, these aren't coaches or entrepreneurs on TikTok or Instagram, right? They're educated, affluent individuals who are running a function at an enterprise company or small to medium-sized business. Whereas selling to a consumer, you know more about the industry and the solution than your counterpart. When selling to corporations, they know just as much about the industry, if not more, than you do about their specific function. Therefore, a lot of the sort of persuasion techniques and urgency and scarcity tactics that work for selling into solo buyers or solo founders, for example, they're not going to affect business buyers in the same way. And in some cases, they'll actually make you appear unsophisticated. Therefore, the best approach is really to show up as an information source, as a problem finder and a problem solver. And so you really just want to aim to be useful when communicating with business buyers, right? You want to become a source of value for them, and you want to be there to help. So figure out how you can join their team from the outside, right? And try to start getting included on planning calls. Forward your prospects updates about the industry, for example, with your own insights and analysis of what it means for them specifically. This is the disposition that you want to have when selling into this part of the market. In B2B, decisions are typically made on longer timetables among a buying committee where you might have 3 to 5 to 7 plus people and possibly several different teams who are involved in making a decision. And the bigger the company that you're selling into, the more patience you typically need to have. It also depends on what you're selling. So I've been in the software game the last decade or so, right? And it can get extremely strung out, convoluted, and political. Selling a new solution into a large enterprise can often take quarters or even years in some cases. And so patience really is a virtue when selling into businesses. Now, if you're selling consulting, let's say, or an employee wellness program or an executive training workshop, you might be working with a little bit of a quicker turnaround time. But when you're talking about SaaS, software solutions, more complex types of products like this, you're easily going to be looking at, probably 1 quarter to a year plus in terms of the average sales cycle. And so the biggest difference in selling to individual consumers versus to corporations, in addition to that longer cycle, is the mentality. It's much easier to use technique, talk tracks, and tactics when speaking with an individual buyer, where a decision is usually able to be made on the spot or very quickly, shortly after meeting that person for the first time. It's not that complicated. It's much more involved selling B2B. Here, you're going to need to act more like an account executive working on a project in tandem with your prospect, acting, and feeling more like an advisor where you'll be sending over information, right? You want to help compile and analyze the numbers, assembling this proposal for your contact to take to their boss, for example, helping to formulate and refine a detailed RFP in some cases, which is a request for proposal, which a lot of enterprises will have you do. Often this would include setting up 3 to 5 to 7 plus discovery calls to answer specific questions, and often demoing your tool or your program to multiple stakeholders multiple times. So I said it and I'll say it again, selling into enterprises requires a high degree of patience, of willingness to work on the schedule of the prospective buyer, right? Constantly setting next steps to progress the sale and moving things along at the pace that the company has set and is comfortable with. It's less about you pushing for a certain timeline or pushing people to make a decision. Setting deadlines generally does not work when selling into enterprises. And again, being willing to rope in your colleagues and being willing to present to colleagues in different departments. The usual call cadence to close a new corporate account is generally cold to discovery to demo. And sometimes, again, you are doing several demos to lead to a closed account. Now, if you're cold calling businesses, which can work to make a new contact, but usually not to close deals, contrary to a point that I made a minute ago, the best strategy is actually to play it a little dumb. And what do I mean this? So I learned this strategy from Jeremy Miner at 7th Level, who teaches a technique called NEPQ, Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning. And he talks a lot about, specifically for cold calling, becoming the confused old grandpa. So this is meant to immediately disarm your prospect. When you call in, right, you almost want to act lost and confused to ease your recipient on the other end into a dialogue with you. So try something like this. Hi, I'm not quite sure if you're the person I'm looking for. I was calling about your HubSpot integration. And a possible issue with that, is this the marketing department? Right? So that is intentionally kind of relaxed. It's non-threatening, it's non-salesy. And then you can go into a little bit more detail when they say, yeah, this is whoever, head of marketing or marketing manager, who is this? And you maintain that same tone. Hey, John, this is Michael over at Lion Solutions. Wasn't sure if you were aware of the recent announcement that HubSpot had made about XYZ, but we actually help firms like yours to make sure that they have all the right tech in place in case of any lapses. Is that on your radar? So something like this that invites the prospect into a easy discussion, but removes the focus of that discussion on pushing for a sale works best. You really want to make it about them, and a news announcement that affects them can be a great entry point into initiating that conversation. Now, even with this strategy, you're still going to get told no, like 90 or 95 times out of 100, right? But for those 5 or 3 people who get through, there may be an opportunity there. Once you have a chance to build some rapport from a cold call, then you can set next steps, ideally a face-to-face discovery where you can make a more human connection on a video call. And then from there, you can give and gain context to potentially set up a demo to learn more about your program. And make sure that you're always setting next steps when talking to business buyers. Never leave it hanging, always progress that sale forward. Closes may involve an RFP process. So that could often include working with procurement, answering questions from them or even other departments, and interacting with other stakeholders across the organization. Okay, I want to shift the focus just slightly and talk a little bit about referrals, customer advisory boards, and third-party reviews. So these are all related to sales and selling, but really talking about other ways to grow, particularly through word of mouth, through customer or client committees, and then message boards, and making sure that you're staying active where your customers are, where your business customers are going to read and to learn about you from other people. So first, word of mouth or referrals. I write about this in the book. Referrals need to be significant enough so as to incentivize your customers to proactively decide to interrupt their colleagues or their peers to invite them to your offer. What does that mean? That means that the payoff needs to be worth it. So for individuals, it needs to be at minimum, I would say, a few $100 that they stand to gain to successfully achieve a task, which could be just getting one friend signed up or sending one friend to a strategy session with you. It could be more like batch rewards, which I also talk about in the book, where you have to meet a certain requirement of a number of referrals in order for that reward to be activated. Now, for business buyers, it also needs to be meaningful, but you typically see things more like personal gifts being offered at generally like higher value points. So like an iPad, for example, or $1,000 Amazon gift card or something like that that is going to speak to a business buyer above and beyond $100 or $200 reward, because there's more at stake for them when referring their colleagues. And so that's how you want to think about referrals for businesses. Client committees or customer advisory boards are another good tactic to consider. These are groups of users who you can go to and share ideas for new products. You can consult for a prospect who wants to speak to others already enrolled before making a decision. For many companies, this is a mandatory part of the RFP process or the consideration process, sort of akin to a testimonial for the consumer game. A lot of companies will need to check references and chat with clients before making a big investment decision. It's also worth noting that you really want to think about what business buyers are most concerned with personally, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all just people. And business buyers specifically are most concerned with their reputation within the context of a company or working on behalf of some entity who pays them a paycheck every 2 weeks. Like, they don't want to fuck up their reputation and put that at risk. At the end of the day, that's what everybody who is an employee getting paid by a company cares about most. And so de-risking for that individual while also adding in a personal reward for them to participate in your client board or to refer their friends can go a long way, because you're pushing on both of those pain points. You're making it easier for them to share and to refer you to their peers, but you're also removing the burden of risk on them. And in return, they should be willing to serve as really great resources for you at the drop of a dime to partake in client, case studies, to really do anything that you need, right? This should be a mutually beneficial and symbiotic relationship as you start to enroll people into these types of activities. And then lastly, third-party review websites. And so Google reviews, Yelp, Trustpilot, G2, Amazon for products, Facebook. These are all places that even business buyers are going to learn about a product. So make sure that you're telling your customers to leave honest reviews in these places. This is absolutely critical. You can also incentivize them to do so with some of the tactics that we were just talking about. So free products, special gifts, and discount coupons for future purchases or future billings on their monthly statement all work well.